Rock on. Okay, so there's four victims here, an alleged fifth victim who wasn't killed, and of course, Erica Pena, who was the woman who testified earlier this week, who said he pulled a gun out at her after she asked him about her friend Melissa Ramirez, who was shot. There was Melissa Ramirez, Claudine Luera, but let me tell you, two of the victims were shot after apparently Pena went running to the other law enforcement agencies, and they're all shot in the head. So is there a commonality of a gun maybe we're going to hear about?
Yes, Linda, we are. But I want to address the false confessions are the hardest thing to litigate against, to defend against in court. Because you're literally, when you talk to the police, when you give a statement, when you confess, or you make admissions.
This case doesn't start with evidence, it starts with a pattern.
You're giving away you're giving away your defense or the ability to defend the case before you even before there's even a trial, before there's even a case. There's an old saying that it's hard to quarrel with your own words. And it's hard to quarrel with your own words, particularly where you confessed to gruesome crimes. Someone that should be able to withstand the interrogation, that should know what to say after Miranda, that should know what to say after they agree to talk to the police, you would think would be a police officer. I'm sure he's had cases where people purportedly confessed to him, came into court and tried to claim that they had falsely confessed.
A confession doesn't end a case. It rewrites it forever.
And he said, no, not so fast. I've got it on tape. I've got it recorded. Watch his demeanor. Watch how sound and intelligent he sounded. That's what I expect the prosecution to do here. The reason why the reference to a gun and an actual a survivor is in the timeline is so important is because it tells us that there is a live person to come into court and who's already come into court and to say, no, he didn't falsely confess. He did it. He did this to me. And then afterwards, he did it to other people. And then you found the bodies. So the defense of false confession may just be the only defense that he has. And that's what I expect to hear in the case.
Rockine, let me talk to you because you and I both have tried murder cases and been in that courtroom, and you kind of alluded to it. But Juan David Ortiz's affect here, where he's...
One survivor changes everything. Because now the story can answer back.
Like staring. I mean, I can't even look at him. The family, Melissa Ramirez's family, is in great pain. You have to be aware of that in the courtroom when you're the attorney, when you're the client, whether you're guilty, not guilty, whatever. And we see the torment they are going through. And, we see the torment, for instance, in the Idaho murders that we have right now, too. Families have to be respected in the courtroom. Tell me about what is going on here.
So it's an excellent point, Linda. There are trial dynamics that are so important, just the optics, the dynamic. So the complainant, the victim's family is sitting there, they're obviously hurting and grieving. One is comforting another on his shoulder. Another is wearing glasses, trying to cover her eyes.
Courtrooms don't run on facts alone. They run on emotion.
Oftentimes prosecutors, when I was a prosecutor, we would go over and want to advise the victim's family that they may want to leave the courtroom, or we'd want advance notice if there was going to be graphic testimony or photographs that were going to be shown like we see here. And I don't want to say that's part of the theater, but that is part of the push and pull that comes in a human drama in a courtroom. And compare that where with the demeanor that we see from the victim's family, who of course never wanted to be in a courtroom under these circumstances, with what we see from the defendant. When you're at a counsel table, and I hope our jurors will take a look at this, or our viewers will look at this, when you see someone at a counsel table,
jurors don't just listen, they study.
All eyes are on him. Even when jurors are looking at evidence, they're always looking over out of the side of their eye. They're all the corner of their eye. They're always looking over to gauge that person's reaction. And compare the victim's family, who are crying, with Mr. Ortiz, who sitting there and at times shaking his head, talking to his lawyers, staring in almost unblinking fashion, almost as hard as you could imagine him more just staring somebody down than at all appearing to be impacted by the emotional testimony and the emotion of the moment. And if he's not feeling, or at least appearing to feel, the emotion in the moment, the jurors are going to wonder why. Why is this man not feeling what we're all feeling?
Silence can be louder than denial.
And there are really only a couple of answers, and they're both terrible. One, that he's a sociopath, or two, that he's somehow responsible and is thinking of himself in that moment and not thinking of his, not thinking of the decedent.
Yeah, as a matter of
When emotion disappears, suspicion takes its place.
fact, you don't need to have a camera in the courtroom, because when you are trying a case as a defense attorney, every single juror's eyes, usually 16 of them if you have alternates, are staring at you with 16 different cameras going into their head, and they're remembering everything you say and do. Now, having said that, he supposedly had a relationship, business transactional relationship with Melissa Ramirez. He was a Border Patrol agent, supposedly engaged in law enforcement. So you are now his counsel. I know you wouldn't take this case.
16 people. 16 memories. No second chances.
But what would you tell him to do, and what would you tell the attorneys now to do to give him a chance, assuming there is this presumption of innocence and maybe he is innocent?
It's a great question, Linda. My conversation with him would have started long before we get to we're in the trial. I believe that trial preparation and defending and trying a case begins as you begin to drive to the courthouse. How is he dressed? How does he look? Is he well shaved? Is he wearing glasses?
A defense doesn't begin with words. It begins with behavior.
He's not part of the legal team. He's the person that the jurors are watching. So I would be advising him, look, when you're sitting there, don't act like this is not technical. You can't stare at the jurors. You have to look human. You have to look like this is impacting you. And even more so because you're a police officer who is sworn to protect people. So you're the kind of person who should be emotionally impacted by seeing a murder or a homicide victim. So look down, look at the table, take some notes, look up. And it's complicated because the jury is judging him. They're watching him. And I'd be telling him all along, look, if there's a joke, don't joke. If there's a sensitive moment, you need to look down at the table. If there's occasionally look up at the jurors so you're not avoiding all eye contact with them like you're ashamed, but you can't stare at them. It is the hardest thing for a person to do who's on trial, but they have to do it. They have to practice attempting to be engaged, but not overly engaged. And they're going to be looking, even just the way he looks, his brow. I would have sat down and would have been watching him prior to beginning the trial and saying, look, let's talk about the way you're going to look during this case.
One wrong gesture can outweigh 1,000 explanations.
Nodding your head and shaking your head like we're doing right now. The jurors don't know why you're nodding or shaking your head. They don't know if you're upset or agreeing or whether. So don't do that. You have to look normal, but you can't look like you're too interested, but not disinterested. It's very complicated. And I know I haven't explained it as well as I'd like to, but you get the point. While you and I are talking right now, the way that you're looking right now is someone who's serious, who's engaged, who's looking, but who doesn't look like you're mad or angry, although you're probably thinking, Neil, stop talking. But you have an engaged look like you're interested, but you have to at some point also look down, and you can't look hard. And it's one of these moments where he doesn't even look comfortable sitting there. And I think the jurors are going to look at him and they're going to look over at the victims, and they're going to think, why does he not look like somebody who's impacted by this very human, very sensitive, very emotional moment?
By now, the jury isn't watching the case, they're watching him.
Probably because, Neil, he is not impacted because obviously we know about serial killer psychology. They're proud of what? they have done and the display of what they have done, especially in Neil Rockine. Apparently there's going to be 10 hours of this video where allegedly David Ortiz confesses to the crime. Now, I could make a joke about perhaps the interview room looked a little bit like Kim Kardashian's bedroom that we've seen on Instagram that's called All the Furor, a little monochromatic. But this is going to be a very important interview tape, isn't it?
Yes. This is the centerpiece of the state's case. Anytime you have a confession, anytime you have a camera on the accused in that environment for that length of time, and not only are all eyes on the accused in the courtroom, but the jurors are going to be looking at him. And
this room will decide more than guilt. It will decide who he really is.
Also being able to have all eyes on him during the interview. They're going to watch the way he looks, sounds, acts, his demeanor. Does he look like he's relaxed? Does he look confident? Does he look aggressive? Does he look cocky? Is he second guessing himself? Is he arguing? They're going to be watching everything about the way that he acts during that interview. This is the most important piece of the case.
And once jurors see the real version, there is no unseeing it.